You open your wallet. Inside is a thin plastic card or maybe a few folded bills. You don't think twice about it. You hand it over and somehow, a stranger gives you food or shoes or a place to sleep for the night. That's strange if you stop to look at it. A piece of paper for a plate of food. A tap of plastic for a pair of shoes. For roughly 99% of human history, this exact transaction would have made no sense at all. So what did people actually use instead? Not always coins. Not always paper. Sometimes, it was something you would never guess. Something that on the surface looks less like money and more like a joke. Except it wasn't a joke. It worked. In some cases, it worked better than what you're carrying right now. Let's start with the strangest one of all, a 5-foot stone disc sitting outside someone's house that nobody ever moves. On the tiny Micronesian island of Yap in the Western Pacific, communities use giant carved limestone discs called rice stones as currency. Some were small enough to carry. Others weighed several tons and never left the spot where they were first set down. Here's the part that sounds impossible. Ownership of a rice stone could change hands without the stone itself moving an inch. Everyone on the island simply knew and agreed who owned which stone. The wealth was tracked socially, not physically. Sound absurd. In 1903, an American anthropologist named William Henry Furness III traveled to Yap and documented this system firsthand, publishing his observations in a book called The Island of Stone Money. He described a family whose fortune came from a rice stone that had sunk to the bottom of the ocean during shipping generations earlier. Nobody had seen it in decades. It didn't matter. Everyone still agreed the family was wealthy because everyone still agreed the stone existed and belonged to them. Value that nobody can touch, backed by nothing except shared belief. That should sound familiar. Nearly a century later, the economist Milton Friedman revisited Furness's account in a 1991 essay, using Yap's stone money to make a pointed argument. Modern currency works exactly the same way. A number in a bank's ledger. A promise on a piece of paper. None of it has value on its own. It has value because a large enough group of people agree that it does. Yap wasn't an isolated case. Ancient economies ran on this same principle constantly, just with different objects standing in for trust. Take the cowrie shell. Small, glossy, shaped almost like a closed eye. For over 1,000 years, cowrie shells harvested from the Indian Ocean were traded as currency across enormous stretches of Africa and Asia. They were light, they were hard to counterfeit, and critically, they couldn't be produced locally in most of the regions that used them, which meant nobody nearby could simply make more and flood the system. Economic historians Jan Hogendorn and Marion Johnson traced this shell money network across West Africa in their research on the trade, showing how cowries functioned as a real working currency system for centuries, moving along trade routes, stretching thousands of miles from where the shells were actually collected. Now picture it. A trader in an inland West African market weighing out a stack of tiny shells for a length of cloth, the same way you'd count out change today. The shells meant nothing to the ecosystem they came from. They meant everything to the humans exchanging them. Salt tells a similar story, and it hides inside a word you already use. Roman soldiers were at times paid partly in salt, a substance essential for preserving food in a world without refrigeration. The Latin word for that payment was salarium. Say it slowly, and you'll hear it. Salary. Every time you talk about your paycheck, you're echoing a system where the cash was something you could season your dinner with. Then there's cacao. In Aztec and broader Mesoamerican society, cacao beans, the raw ingredient of chocolate, functioned as small denomination currency. Spanish colonial records from the 16th century describe prices set in specific numbers of beans. So many beans for a turkey, a smaller number for a tomato, an even smaller number for a single item of fruit. The beans were valuable enough to matter, small enough to make change, with and unlike stone discs or shells edible if the market failed entirely. It's currency with a built-in backup plan. And on the northeastern coast of North America, wampum cylindrical beads carefully cut and polished from whelk and quahog shells serve both as a medium of exchange and as a way to record treaties, agreements, and social obligations among indigenous nations, particularly the Haudenosaunee. Wampum wasn't just spent. It was woven into belts that functioned almost like physical documents, preserving the memory of an agreement in a form everyone present could see and touch. So here's the reconstruction. Imagine you're a trader 1,000 years ago, standing at a crossroads market. In one direction, someone is bargaining with cowrie shells for cloth. In another, a family is quietly reminding a neighbor that they still own a rye stone sitting untouched on the far side of the island. Someone nearby hands over a small pouch of cacao beans for a woven basket. None of these objects share a shape, a material, or an origin. And yet every single person in that market understands exactly what they're worth because the community around them has agreed on it. That's the part almost nobody expects. And it's the real twist hiding underneath all of this. You probably assume money is defined by the object. Gold, coins, paper, plastic. But every single one of these ancient systems reveals the opposite. The object was never really the point. The agreement was the point. Stone, shell, bean, bead, salt, none of it had value on its own. It had value the moment enough people decided together to treat it as valuable and kept treating it that way. Which means, technically, currency has never been a physical thing at all. It's a belief that a group of humans maintains collectively, sometimes for centuries, sometimes across a stone that no one has laid eyes on in 3 generations. Once you see it this way, modern money stops looking so different from a 5-ton rock on a Pacific island. Your bank balance isn't a pile of paper sitting in a vault somewhere with your name on it. It's mostly a number in a database backed by nothing you could hold in your hand, working only because everyone downstream, the store, the bank, the government agrees to keep honoring it. You accept a paycheck you'll never see as physical cash. You pay for coffee with a tap that transfers no metal, no paper, nothing tangible at all. It runs on exactly the same fuel the Ware stones ran on, shared trust agreed upon by people who mostly never discuss it out loud. You reached into your wallet at the start of this video without thinking twice about what was inside it. Now you know the truth. It was never really about what's in your hand. It's about what everyone around you has quietly agreed to believe.